Srikanth, you mentioned about that incident in Urumqi, in Xinjiang or East Turkestan. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the people in the mainland Han China would not have reacted to it had it not been for Hans who died there. I think, if I remember right, in the incident, it was the Han Chinese who died in that fire, and not the local, local Uyghur Muslims. Am I right?
That is true. Many of these apartments in the suburbs are generally bought by the Han Chinese. So these are basically influx from the rest of China. But in general, this is a crisis situation. This is a humanitarian crisis. If people are charred to death, there is that humanity that spilled over from the rest of China. Common people demonstrated because everywhere actually there is a lockdown, and it is quite possible if they would not have raised these concerns, it could have been possible in other places as well, in other cities as well. So there is a genuine humanitarian response from the rest of the people in China, and they were all suffering. The most important is last 2.5 years, all of them were suffering, and they were trying to question. So this incident actually triggered a public debate, even though bracing the WeChat and other restrictions, and also police knocking at your doors if you put something in the WeChat, the social networking sites. So there is an outpouring of the humanitarian gestures from the rest of the country. And these were also, by the way, reflected in Central Asian republics, where the people have condemned such brutality. But I would assume that the ordinary people were concerned about safety of all, including Uyghurs, including Han and others. This is actually a crisis situation. They were charred to death. That was in general, as you mentioned, Shanghai, between one building to the other, they would create a iron barricade, steel barricades all across, so that people don't go from one building to the other. And this has become quite severe, and many psychological cases were reported in Shanghai. So this has become the China model. That is, you first lock down the whole building and probably do not give them even food. If by e-commerce, if food and other materials are supplied, at the base where the guard lives, there is a place where much of this material is dumped, and you have to go and find whether this food material has arrived. And secondly, if there is a lockdown, anytime, any place can be converted into a lockdown situation. And people who are denied food, people who are denied basic hygiene, conditions like a toilet, and for 5 days, they are shut down. And the next 12 days, they are put in a quarantine in a stadium, in an isolated box. So things have really gone beyond, and why they have done what they have done in the last 2.5 years, no explanation was given so far. This is a humanitarian crisis in China. While they said that they are protecting the people, but actually they are locking down so that they can not express any political dissent. So lockdowns helped the political establishment to an extent for 2.5 years to shut down any interaction, and that resulted in huge, problems for the Chinese people.
Yeah. Again, let's look back at the medicine shortages that they have. I understand that even simple things like paracetamol or ibuprofen is not available, and that the people actually queued up outside the manufacturing industry itself, the unit itself. but then the government clamped down and then they started rationing it. Why can't they come back to a real pharmaceutical manufacturing giant like Bharat? Why could they not have bought things from us? I mean, is it their ego that stopped them? I know they're smuggling, but when Donald Trump, in all his arrogance, he opened up and said, "I need hydrochloroquine or whatever." Why couldn't the Chinese leadership, without announcing, quietly they could have placed orders and picked up quite a lot of the medicines which they're running short? Why could the regime not do it? Is it that their ego is stopping, or is it that they wanted to prove to their people that our medicines are effective? What exactly is their mindset, sir?
In general, they look down upon Indians, Indian companies, and as I was mentioning, the Communist Party has linkages with the European pharmaceutical lobbies. Secondly, the indigenous pharmaceutical industry is also controlled by the Communist Party in China. So there is actually a problem here of letting cheaper drugs, effective but cheaper drugs for the common people. In India, we abolished many diseases because of this, facility of the generic drugs. In the case of China, this is ego problem, the pharmaceutical lobbies, pressure, the Communist Party. For example, Brazilian President Bolsonaro wrote a letter to the Prime Minister saying Indian paracetamol is like Sanjeevani, Hanuman's Sanjeevani, medicine for what we heard in Ramayana about that. When Wuhan meeting took place between Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, there was also the suggestion that the Chinese import more pharmaceuticals. So some 9 items have been identified at that time, and they try to, especially cancer curing drugs, were imported from India, but not really in bulk quantity. So this is also basically the attitude that the deficits should not be bridged up by this Indian pharmaceutical industry. Although India earns something like $54 billion by the pharmaceutical exports every year, Chinese do not want to open up their market. Partly, they say because they were basically dependent on traditional Chinese medicine. But actually, it is because of the Communist Party linkages with the European pharmaceutical lobby. That's a big nexus in Chinese, reality, and so this is one of the main reasons. Although we have an agreement in Wuhan, they could have imported a lot of these drugs, life-saving drugs, and help the Chinese come over the crisis situation. We have actually, when the Wuhan incident took place, Indian Air Force flew sorties to Wuhan, taking drugs in these C-130J aircraft or other Air India flights to Wuhan in those 3 missions that we conducted. But no signaling from China to seek help from India on this count. And so this is very unfortunate that they suffered a lot because of this intransigence.
Yeah, I mean, I think their arrogance and their, intransigence has cost their people a lot. And I don't think even the leadership has escaped from this, as I understand. I saw a report which said that in December 2022, that is last month, more than 50 senior retired, especially retired CCP leaders died. That included not just CCP leaders, but also some famous actors, artists, musicians. I mean, essentially the elite in the society who had close linkages to the Communist Party. I understand from that report that these people were trying to extend their lifespan by getting organ retransplanted from, we don't know, maybe Xinjiang Uyghurs maybe Falun Gong, we don't know. Maybe they're, picking up young people, disappearing them and taking their organs. And looks like their immunity was so low that when this wave hit, they all died. This is the report I hear about it, sir. If you could throw more light on this, what exactly is happening, especially to the elite. I think one of their senior most leader, their former president, also died. I think who is it? Jiang Zemin. I think Jiang Zemin died. He was 96, I think. But there are others also around the same age, 90s and 100, 102. Suddenly they all died. So what exactly is this? I hear the Project 150, they call it Project 150. They wanted to extend the life to 150, I believe. And so a sinister way of trying to harvest the organs from living people, pick them up, and then replace it every 10, 15 years to these senior people. And I think all this came out during this particular event, this particular pandemic episode in December. If you could throw more light on that, it will help, sir.
Indeed, there was the news report by the Ipoh Times on the situation in China, especially the elder cohort, which faced the problem of adjustment to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the most vulnerable group in China because many of them were not actually vaccinated. So they actually refused to be vaccinated because of the problems in the vaccination. These are also not related to the RNA aspects. So there is a concern there by the elderly group. I saw that report which mentioned about these scientists in sensitive programs like rocket engineering, in propulsion, in IT related military industrial complexes and space program or others. Many have passed away, and these belong to the elderly cohort. So there is a much concern there on the, but even younger people passed away because of the situation in the country. It's overwhelming. The virus is overwhelming because of the lack of immunity. The lockdowns were supposed to increase the immunity, but the reverse has happened, and sudden opening up resulted in a kind of a rampage of the virus. So this is a problem that the elderly cohort faced in China. I keep getting reports regularly, and many keep saying that 1 in 2 have been infected in their households, in their vicinity, in the educational institutions, factories. And the insensitivity is that even though they are infected, the government agencies are asking them to go and work in the factories, which is going to further spread the virus. And so this extreme step is also problematic. So whichever way you look at this, has been a tragic situation for Chinese people.
Would you like to comment on the Project 150, sir, where the senior leaders, I believe, have been receiving organ transplants to live longer? This is a news item I heard.
Yes, there is the, I read that report, and there are reports from Hong Kong, Falun Gong, and others where the organ transplantation is attempted. But it is quite incredible to extend the life to 150 years. There was a suggestion on the CRISPR-Cas technologies where they are removing some genes and incorporating, and all this has also actually resulted in the spread of the Wuhan virus in the beginning in 2019, because they were trying to tweak the genetic character of the virus. And so according to a scientific, personal scientists, they argue that this has actually boomeranged on China. So I'm not sure whether the 150 really can be credible, if they can really extend this to 150, or these are kind of pipe dreams, because a human being generally lasts for 100 years. And if they want to make, we have heard about these in the Western sci-fi movies, but it's quite incredible to see anyone lasting 150 years. And so the Chinese are actually misplacing the priorities by not focusing on the common people's livelihood and others. So if this report is correct, then it is actually very insensitive to other people, especially when the organ transplants take place, in order to benefit some people, the party leaders and others.
Share this video, like, subscribe, and comment, and then encourage a nationalistic channel like Nationalist Hub.